Hey everybody, XJoe81X here. And what we're going to be doing today is flushing or taking the air out of the boiler system. Now, before I get into it, I want to first and foremost tell everybody that I am not a plumber. And this system is different from your system. If this exact same company installed the exact same system and you lived next door, something would still be different. You understand? So don't take what I'm about to show you for granted, thinking that, oh, XJoe81X told me to do it this way. Now my entire system doesn't work. Okay? Another disclaimer is do not do this after you turn the boiler on. If you think a couple of weeks, months, or whatever situation goes by and you kind of hear tingling or rattling in your copper pipes, or maybe the furthest zone on your house, depending how much square footage, is making like an awkward noise or dripping or popping, it might be an air bubble trapped. And you don't want to say, you know what, I watched XJoe81X's video, let me shut all my valves and let me do what he does. No. Because as soon as you turn this on and this gauge down here gets the temperature, this down here is a block, and that gets hot. And what happens with that is then you're going to shut all the valves and do what I'm about to just show you. And then you're going to run cold water through a hot block. And what's going to happen? You're going to crack it. If you don't think you're going to crack it, then you know what? Do it. Then you could also tell me, hey, XJoe81X, guess what? I didn't crack it. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is all your plumbers out there or your engineers and stuff. Some people will say, well, wait, this is a closed system. So if you had no problem last year, why are you doing this year? Because you know what? You're not hurting it. There might be a little bubble in number 3. It might have been a bubble in number 1, but the heat, I'm just saying. Okay, you're not hurting it. Maybe you don't want to do it every year. Maybe during the winter you say, hey, you know what, zone 2, when the heat turns on, makes a bubbling noise. Shit, there's a lot of, so-and-so. Now, yes, some of these pieces, as you look around the boiler, there's pressure valves, and the caps are supposed to be loose. And as bubbles come through, you won't even know unless you live down here. It'll come down and just, So first thing is first is your boiler's off. My boiler has been off since the winter. This is the expansion tank. Unfortunately, they didn't put it back here. All they had to do was come out on the bottom, run a pipe right here, and then make a 90 and then put it right here. So I have to work with this thing in the way. And it's actually so obtrusive, you could actually loosen it. That's the funny part. So the first thing you have to do is basically identify your system. I had this system installed 4 years ago, and it was brand new, and I had them put in the valves before and after the circulators. One, so if any of my circulators broke or leaked, I could isolate that circulator. I could unscrew it in the winter or whatever, even in the summer, because there's still water in here. So if you break these screws, you're gonna just get everything's gonna leak. So at least if you put a towel down and you shut these off and you shut the heat, you could there's a couple of drips, and you could take all these so-and-sos off. Another thing is as you bleed the zones. So obviously these are ball valves, and when the handle is up and down, that means that's the flow of fluid, in this case, water. So we're going to shut it all off. Well, we'll leave the first one on, but we're going to shut it off. Here we go. Again, if you do not have this, you might just be able to hook it up the same way that I do, and just kind of get it done your way. We're going to clean the boiler off camera. It's always nice to shop vac around the boiler, take a rag or a vacuum and clean the top. Boiler's going to get hot. You don't want to make that, what's it called, that dust smell. Okay, so I'm kind of going to just talk, double check the camera. Okay, make sure your hose is long enough. If not, you have to use the garden hose. Okay, so let me get over here. Let me show you. You want to connect the hose. You want to connect the hose to the lowest point, which is right here on mine, which is right there. Okay, but you also want to shut off the midpoint, because if you don't, what's going to happen is cold water is going to come in and it's going to circulate through here. So right back there, there's two things. There's the shut off that goes in to the boiler. You want to shut that off because then it goes through and it stays circulating, doesn't piss out. And then I forgot what that's called, but that's the cold air. Sorry, cold water. I'm getting really confused because it's late in the day and I worked and I haven't made a video in 2 months. Thanks for watching. So when the boiler calls for more water because maybe heat evaporated it or some kind of system sensor in here, and what happens is it senses the fact that there's low water, which is this box right here. So then it chooches it from the street, and that's a pressure relief valve that lets you, the boiler, bring in water as it's needed and not at like full city pressure. So we're gonna hook some things up, shut some things off. I'll be right back. I have to apologize. I'm very sorry. This is what drains the boiler. That's the lowest point. There's the water pressure valve from the street. There's the valve back there that brings the return, why it's so thick, all the way back in. You want to shut that off, and then you want to go a little above it. Like again, all boilers are different. Okay, so what you want to do is now, for argument's sake, let's start over. Everything is shut. As soon as I turn that on, water by default is going to drain out of this big pipe, this big return behind here. It's going to come all down and it's going to go out the hose. And because the boiler is made to circulate water, this is going to engage that thing. City water is going to turn on and it's going to go through the circulator, and then it's going to go through zone 1, and then you shut off 2, 3, and 4. If you go down there, now you're bringing it through the boiler, and you don't really need to do that because then you're going to stir up all the sediment on the bottom. I was told from multiple plumbers that this is where you drain it from, because if you don't, and again, if you don't shut this, it's going to keep going and you're not going to get anything. Here's the hot water pressure relief. There's a pressure relief back there, it looks like. You know, you don't really want to touch things. This is the thing I told you that has to be loose because it sometimes goes, you know, throughout your system. There might be a couple. This has one. So what we're going to do is crank this open. Which, see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? I can't. So righty tighty, lefty loosey. Yeah, I think it should have been a ball valve instead of a wastegate valve, because this is really taking a long time to open. Okay, so now if you hold the pipe, it should be going through here. See, I have it set up and it goes behind the hot water heater, and there it is. You might not see any of the bubbles, but this is definitely worked through the system. You could always hold it And then you could always test it, because when you do this, it shuts the water. And you turn it back on slowly. So we're going to choose each zone for about 5 to 6 minutes. And if I forget anything, I'll be right back. Well, that was more than enough time. I shop vac and cleaned a little bit. So what we're going to do is kill zone 1. Do it above the circulator. Okay, and you can keep all these open. There's no reason to close it. Zone 2. Keep these open because now water is hitting the top of the valve and it's staying. No bubbles. And then now it's going to this valve. And now it's circulating through here. And you could tell because the street water is really cold. So you could feel the pipes. And they're like cold compared to this that's been sitting all summer. They're not that cold. This is like cold water. And the noise you're hearing is the pressure valve. Somebody on the internet said, yeah, open it. Full city water. And then someone says, no, you don't want all that pressure, even though it's not hot, going through your system. It's only rated for a certain amount of pressure. You don't want to just put full city water through your boiler. It's only, So I don't know if it's all irrelevant. I don't know if that's actually the truth. If the pressure going through the boiler could hurt it, even though it's not being heated and it's just going through pipes. Doesn't matter. Run this for 5-6 minutes each zone. And then we'll finish cleaning up, and then next will be the turning it on. So we just chooched on zone 3 the same way. Excuse me. Shut the top. This is what the guts look like. There's nothing to it. Cleaned the bottom with the shop vac. Got in there with the dirty rag. Cleaned it as best I can. They're basically barbecue tubes. And they heat up. They engulf. When I turn this on and shut the lights and stuff and turn it all on and turn on one of the thermostats. Okay, we've isolated all 4 zones. We've drained them. We've shut the gate valve. Okay, now it's time, when you break that hose, it's going to drip because it takes the path of least resistance, so it's sitting in the loop. So now what you do is you're done with the hose, you lift it up, and then you drop it, and you'll see, this is just for the dehumidifier. You just kind of leave it there, pod, and that's what happens when I work. So now when you break it, you have air. Of course it spits, but it's a basement, so trust me, plumbers, they're worse. They don't even show you what they do. And if I broke it, if I can, I'll bring it up and around. Now I have it in both, remember the old, and then you just, there we go. Yes, there's actually that much water in there. Okay. This gets put on the side another day. Again, it's a basement, it's not a big deal. Put this on the floor. Soak it it up. It's cobwebs. Okay, now remember you have to open up the back valve, otherwise, I don't know. You might break it. So here we go, slowly. Everything is so okay. Of course, it dripped in my hand. That's nice. That always is nice, knowing that that valve is probably loose. And I tighten it. It's tight and it's loose. Right. So I might just put a little piece on that, a little wrench. Okay. So now you can open up all this stuff. Should have all water in here. Shouldn't hear anything draining down. You shouldn't. Okay, all the valves are up and down. Now turn the boiler on. All the thermostats are off. We're going to turn the thermostat on downstairs. Upstairs. We're going to leave this running because you have to call for heat. Let me just double check. Okay, so I have my wife turning the thermostat to 80 because there's no way for it to heat. What you see blinking is standby 1. So I'll show you the lights later, but what you have now, here it comes. The flute's opening up. Beeping, number 18. Should fire. All right, while we're in the dark here, you get your thing, OCP, that means something on the top. SAE, it's supposed to be STA, which is standby. It says number 1 when the heat's not on. It says the number 18, and then it says number 8. I'll turn the light on in a second. Here's your green light for the low water, which means that there's enough water. And here's your 4, 5, 6 zone stuff. I'll put the light on. Obviously green is good, and it lets me know what zone is currently on. So for all you chuchia fungulis out there, here's the flame. It's really can't get in there better, well, you know, but all right, remember 18? That told us that it was waiting for the damper to open. If you heard it, it made a little creaking sound, and then now it's running 8, which means it's running. This stuff down here, you could get a card and then run a wire to the north west of the house, and it'll actually make the boiler turn on and off and stay sufficient without setting it to like 70. Here's the 4 zone. Green means power, and now my 3rd zone is on. That light coincides with the number here, 3. My wife put upstairs. So it's getting warm. You could still touch it and definitely hear the flow. So that's how XJO81X bleeds my heater system. Different parts of the country, different parts of the world, it's called different. This is a gas-fired hot water system. It all fires up, goes left, goes around the entire house, and comes back. I believe it's called a monoflow system. Mono meaning one pipe. Well, but multiple zones. I could be a little bit wrong, but the system is definitely a one pipe left and a return on the right. This is going to conclude. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, if I did it wrong, if I missed a step, if you suggest I drain the boiler using the bottom, maybe some people say leave the top stuff alone and let it go through the boiler. I was told, like I said, not, because there's sediments, but then some people might say, wait, no, you want to stir up the sediments. I don't know. This is only 4 years old. So that's another thing, is do I go through the bottom spigot right here next year? To each his own. So now as the winter starts, you'll hear noises, and then you'll have to say, oh shoot, I should have ran zone 4 maybe a little bit longer. But it's already on. Knock on wood, it's working. And hopefully we get many years out of this. So this is going to conclude how XJO81X gets air bubbles out of the heating system. Thanks for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe. Hey, and we're going to see you in the next video.